welcome to the Unfleshed podcast, episode 17. Today we got Todd Brown. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, very welcome. So based off everything I've seen of yours, you're pretty much a zombie writer.
That is probably 95, 98% of what I write, yeah.
So what kind of got you started into the whole zombie thing?
Wow, it goes all the way back to the original Dawn of the Dead with George Romero. I was 14, and our neighbor, all he had was daughters, so he would take me to all these cool places that he couldn't take his daughters. And for my 14th birthday, he took me to a horror movie double feature, which tells you how long ago it was. And the second film, actually not even the movie I was there to see, was the original Dawn of the Dead. 2 rows in front of me, 10 minutes into the movie, I think, this girl puked into her popcorn. And when you're 14, there's just nothing cooler. So I was hooked.
Oh yeah. Well, I've been following you on Facebook for a little while. I actually seen where you did. I guess it was an interview doing I guess it was like a walk and talk. How'd that go?
Which one? Because I'm not.
It was something about you. I guess you were walking your dogs and doing an interview or something.
Oh yeah, I had a friend of mine. It was just for a friend, really. They were trying to I think they were just practicing to get themselves up and running. So, and God, that was a while ago, I think.
Yeah, it probably has. I spend more time writing than I probably do online, and so yeah, I want to say it was at least a few months ago.
Yeah, I was a friend of mine. He actually wanted to do a thing about my wife and I, and so we said, sure, why not? And he brought and they even had like a cameraman and everything, so it was kind of fun.
Cool.
Awesome. So, what other types of genres do you write? You said 95% of what have you is of zombies. Do you go outside of that then?
Actually, I've got a couple of things that are. One thing that's technically not zombies. It sort of plays around the fringes. It's a horror comedy series called That Ghoul Ava, and she's a ghoul. She makes it really clear she's a ghoul, not a zombie. And it's got a lot of 80s humor, kind of a psych bent to it. If you remember that old TV show from a couple years ago.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Every one of the titles of all the chapters, which becomes a problem when I start writing and have to figure out what I'm going to call the chapter, but all the titles are 80s songs, so that makes it fun.
Yeah,
the other thing that I've got actually just came out about 4 or 5 weeks ago was a book that I started back in '93 during the Rodney King riots, but I was married to somebody who told me I was wasting my time and to stop, spending all this, useless, pointless hours at a typewriter when I could be, spending time with her, which part of the reason I spent all the time at a typewriter was so I didn't have to be around her. But it was a book that I titled Uncivil War, and it's about a modern-day, full-scale race war in the United States. And it's been sitting in a box forever, and I pulled it out and dusted it off about a year ago, thought I would do it just for fun and see if I could get it done. And then, of course, with everything that's been going on in the news lately, it's sort of topic relevant with the stuff in Missouri and everything else like that. We just had another protest in downtown Portland. I don't go to them. I don't really care to get in the mix of all that. But it was an interesting topic, and I finally got it off my chest. And then there's the first book I ever wrote, which is called Dakota, which is about 2 guys from the modern era that get thrown back in time to 1861, right before the start of the Civil War in Charleston, South Carolina, and one of them is black.
Awesome. You actually don't write under any Todd Brown. You write under T.W. Brown, correct?
That is correct. There was another Todd Brown that was out there, and not that we were necessarily doing the same thing, but I just decided it would be easier, and it was something that I'd been called way back in the day, so I figured I could just dust it off, and that was just as good.
Yeah. And from my understanding, you're actually You're friends with Clive Barker and some other people like that, right?
I would use friends in a real liberal term there. I mean, I've been following them for years. Same thing with like Neil Gaiman and stuff like that, or Gaiman, depending on who you talk to. It just I've followed a lot of writers through social media just because a lot of times they will write an essay or something about what it takes to be a writer. And I'm of the mindset that you can always learn something, especially from people who have been doing it longer and probably better than most.
I can definitely agree with that.
So what would separate your writing from, say, any other person that does the zombie genre type stuff? What would separate yours?
I would say that, especially with the Dead series, that by the time you get through the first couple of books, it really is no longer about the zombies anymore. It's really more sort of people-centric. When I started the Dead series, it was a while back. It was before there were a million books out there, and the stuff that I was reading was all the same sort of Romero story rehashed. And I was like, zombie people aren't, they're not one-dimensional. They can handle stuff that goes a little further. Most of us have read The Stand by Stephen King, which that's like my all-time favorite book. I had just finished reading the Song of Fire and Ice series by George R. R. Martin, and I was really inspired by the way he wrote every chapter from a different character's perspective. So I sort of bastardized that idea with the Dead series, and it's written in 3 rotating chapters. You have Steve chapter, which is kind of a first-person thing. You're following through everything with one guy. Then there's the Geeks chapter, and it's 4 guys who thought the zombie apocalypse would be really cool and found out it wasn't. And then vignettes, which in book 1, I have to admit, I sort of botched it. My idea, looking at it, from up top and thinking that I knew what I was doing, was that I was just going to write these little short snapshots of things that were happening all over the world and just kind of use it as a palate cleanser in between the Steve and the Geek chapter. What ended up happening is that some of the vignettes kept going. In fact, I have one vignette that started in book 1 and concludes in book 12, which is the last book of the Dead series, called Dead End. And some of them were just one-timers. The early reviews, people were like, "There's just too damn many characters to follow, man. Narrow it down." And I was like, "Oops." I thought that I was doing something kind of different, and what I ended up doing is really sort of confusing a lot of people, because there was a lot going on, and I sort of honed the vignettes chapter over the next couple of books and whittled it down, and so you only had 5 to follow. And the Dead series, the way it's written, is every 3 books is kind of an arc, sort of stealing from the Lucas Star Wars idea, and so after every 3 books, I kind of could clean the slate on one vignette and bring in a new one, and that was how also, like I said, I've got one that's lasted all the way through, and it just never seemed to end, so it actually comes to a conclusion in book 12.
Awesome. And from reading up on your Amazon, you have a blog. Kind of, I guess, explain your blog a little bit. Is that really to follow your books, to follow you, or do you like tell stories on that, or what?
It's sort of a little bit of everything. Sometimes it's just a chance to get things out of my system. I try not to be like psycho rant boy, because I found that can be real off-putting. You think you have a valid leg to stand on, but especially out there online, there are just so many people out there that will, rip that to shreds, and you kind of come off sounding whiny, because they're not in your shoes, so they may not know all the stuff that you're thinking or feeling at the time, and they really don't care. So you just kind of come off like a bit of a tool. But if I ever, if I have a little bit of a rant, I try and throw that out there. A lot of times it's like when people start bitching about reviews, if you write, you're going to get a 1-star review, and if you can't handle it, get a different job. That's just part of the business. So every once in a while, I will come out and sort of tiptoe around that soapbox a little bit. The other stuff I do, I talk about a lot of the things that I do away from the keyboard. I'm a big fan of the tribute band scene in Portland, so I write a lot of reviews about some of the shows that I see. I share a lot of pictures. Went to a big 2-day outdoor music festival with groups like Unchained, which is Van Halen, Appetite for Deception, which is Guns N' Roses, there's Heart, Journey, Foreigner, a whole bunch of tribute bands. Spent a weekend doing that. I'm actually writing a book about that later this year, that there will be a kickoff concert for the release date. The guy that's the promoter locally is going to throw that together. Plus, we just purchased a brand new Newfoundland puppy. We've been on a waiting list for 2 years. The intention is we're going to show her and take her through the water circuit training, where she learns water rescue, and then draft cart, which is pulling a cart that's weighted through an obstacle course. And then there's the obedience trials and everything. And if I feel confident enough, we're actually going to go into the ring and try and show her against other newbies. I don't have like Westminster aspirations or anything, but it's just something to do that gets me away from my desk, because otherwise I could stay here every day and not move.
I can agree with you on that. If you see me, I'm standing sideways. When I came upstairs to my office, I spilled beer all over my keyboard, so that's not good. So sorry about that. But anyways, if you're familiar with our podcast or not, I always like to do a little shout it out real quick, which is I'm going to give you a topic. It's not a question, just a topic, and you just give your best response to it. So, are you okay with that?
I'm absolutely okay with it.
All right. Topic is for Mr. Brown, suspenders.
Suspenders are things that I'm probably going to end up wearing since I'm closing in on 50, and I've always seen those as old people fashion. But it'll give me places to put the buttons that my daughter keeps buying me that I never wear and have got them stuck to a wall in my recording studio. I'm going to absolutely get a pair of rainbow suspenders just because. It has nothing to do with supporting any cause. I just think they look ridiculous. And a pair of sandals, I've got black socks, and a pair of rainbow suspenders, and then I'm going to make my wife walk around on the beach with me for an afternoon.
Hell yeah. Rainbow suspenders, though, I have to say, reminds me of oh God, what's the old show? I'm 41. Robin Williams.
Oh, yeah, Mork and Mindy.
Yeah, Mork and Mindy, absolutely. All right, well, thanks for participating in the shout-out, man.
Absolutely. That was a blast. Yeah, I just went and found you guys on YouTube and started listening to a bunch of stuff, so I knew where I was jumping into, because I actually had a podcast here in Portland call me a few weeks ago that wanted me to come in, and it turned out, and as soon as I walked in the door, I recognized the guy, but it just turned out that one of the guys that was my interviewer used to be a regular guest on my call-in sports talk radio show. And he did not recognize me at first, because back in the day I had really long hair down to about my waist and sort of bleached blonde and everything else. And now I keep it shaved just because it's easier. But plus I've probably gained a few pounds. But yeah, I walked in and he goes, as soon as I reminded him and told him who I was, he was like, dude, the whole reason I do this is because I used to call in your show all the time. And I was like, well, are you having fun? He goes, this is the best. I was like, great. He goes, hey, the roles are turned. And I go, yeah, anytime. So yeah, we had a good time.
So what stopped you with the sports podcast? I think that's cool. I want to just applaud you for that. I think that's pretty awesome that you did that. But was it right?
It was back in the early 90s. Actually, at the time, there were only two 24-hour sports stations. One of them was Star Communications out of Boston, and the other one was The Fan out of Minnesota. People were trying to figure out, companies, when I say people, were trying to figure out what to do with the AM side of their radio stations, because obviously music wasn't it anymore. CD players were, populating, and clear sound and everything. So AM radio was starting to die, and our station decided to ditch the heavy metal format. We had classic rock on FM, and then the AM side was like Iron Maiden, Metallica, Megadeth, stuff like that. They ditched the music and went sports talk as an experiment before they threw the switch on their AM station up in Seattle, which was KJR. So the money was terrible. I mean, we were dirt poor. If you didn't have ads being purchased for your slot, you weren't getting paid. You came on as a contract person. And it was fun for a while, but I needed to pay bills.
Oh, I hear you there. Real quick here, I also want to ask you, while it's on my mind, so your family now, but they support you pretty well on your writing and everything that you're doing and trying to do and what have you? I mean, obviously, if so, that's got to be helpful, right?
My wife actually was the one who told me to walk away from my job a little over 3 years ago. She said, you know what? You can do this, but you need to devote all your time to it, because you're so tired. You're getting a bit here, you're getting a bit there. Your books are just starting to move, but you can't write them fast enough. So quit. We'll struggle, but we've been through worse, and we can do this. And I was like, really? And trust me, it didn't take me 3 days before I was like scanning the want ads, wanting to find another job, because I was watching, every day, with Amazon, you can see how many books you sold. And I'd be like, it's a down day. I better get a job. And I would freak out. And she'd be like, would you just stop?
So you have devoted your time then to just writing then?
It's all I do.
That is awesome.
Yeah, it's a full-time gig. And now that I've got the studio up, I'm actually narrating the spinoff, because, like I said, Dead 12 comes out in October. It's called Dead End. I will not be The Who. It will not be a farewell tour, and then another farewell tour, and then another farewell tour. I've seen people with successful series end the series and then try something else, and then the money's not necessarily what they were used to. Because I'll tell you, when a new Dead book comes out, and yeah, there's people that sell a lot more, but when a new Dead book release month, I usually have at least 1,000 units on release month, at least. And then it levels out. So you get that massive pop, from your Amazon paycheck. And I get a really nice pop when the Audible version comes out. So that's kind of a really good 1-2 punch. When Dead 12 comes out, I have said there will not be a book 13, which is why I've started the spin-off series, which is called Snapshot. And it was a win, really. I just kind of threw it out there one day. I said, if I took the universe from the Dead series that you know, and I brought it to your town, would anybody be interested? And I thought, this has been one of those things where I get like 4 likes and 1 boo me type thing. And at like 240 responses, I'd never gotten a response like that ever. And I finally had to tell people, okay, stop. I'm not going to write 240 books. So I'm not going to live that long. So I wrote the first one for Portland. It just so happened that it was able to tie in. I signed a 3-year sponsorship deal with a local arena football league team. So they had a big thing. It was up in the Moda Center, which is where the Trailblazers play. I used to be a basketball fan, but I was a Sonics fan because I'm originally from Seattle. So I'm not so much a Blazer fan, but I have been to the Moda Center. So when I first saw my book cover up on the Moda Center Jumbotron, it blew me away.
I can imagine so. Wow, that's phenomenal.
It just floored me. So
I know TJ's chomping at the bit to ask you a question, so I'll ask my next question. Sorry, TJ. Sometimes I can be a hoarder. But what advice would you give to indie authors or those that are just starting out on writing?
Write every single day, and don't listen to anybody that tells you what you can't do. Because it doesn't matter how good you are or how bad you are, there are going to be people that love you and people that hate you. That's just part of it. You have to have a thick skin. You've got to be able to suck it up and just say, you know what? There's going to be people that are going to come at me and say, you suck, you're wasting your life, don't buy this book, it's garbage, blah, blah, blah. If you want to do it with everything you've got, but don't do it for the money. Because if you're doing it for the money, you're in it for the wrong reason. Do it because if you don't write, you'll go crazy, And then just every single day, even if you just sit there and stare at your screen, make time for it, I write sometimes 7 days a week if I'm on if I've got something that I have to deal with that's important that I don't often have deadlines, but when I do, I can be in my office 7 days a week. But I write, every day, and I write because I love it. I couldn't now imagine doing anything else. If I ever have to go back to a, quote, real job, I'm going to be the worst employee in the world because I'm going to be miserable and I'm going to hate it, And that's the other thing is you have to be disciplined. You have to be hard on yourself and sit at your desk and work. My best friend came over one day and he's like, we had lunch and I said, yeah, I'd love to stay and visit more. I said, but dude, I got stuff I got to get done. And he's like, but you're self-employed. You work for yourself. And I go, uh-huh. And if the words don't come out, I don't get paid. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. If I did what you did, I would sit at my desk. I would turn on Diablo just to finish one little part of a quest. And 3 days later, I'd be there in my underwear with a, empty case of Red Bull and a bunch of donut sticks. Boxes, He said, so more power to you for sticking with it. But, I know what has to be done and I'm on top of it every single day. I treat it like a regular job, but it's a job that I love. And if you're an indie trying to do it, that's what you have to make it. You have to love it, you have to do it every day, and you have to tune out everything else. And that is especially true for the negatives.
Wow.
And who would you say, as far as indie authors on I guess authors you support, the indie authors that I guess you more or less follow?
Ellie Constant, I'm big on. She's only got a couple of titles out there, but I really dig her stuff. Claire Riley is fantastic with dialogue. I completely dig reading Claire. I would say, going back a ways, Tony Monchinsky is probably one of the first guys that when I read Eden, I was like, all right, this is a different twist on the whole zombie thing. It really wasn't about the zombies, it was about the people. And it was kind of a crime mystery sort of thing going on, because you had to find out who caused the guy to die and everything else like that. And Kim Pappenroth, one of the first ones was what was his name? It's been so long since I've read him, and I feel awful because he's actually the first zombie book that Dead Planet. He also did Dead World, Dead Universe. Where was it? I feel so bad for forgetting this guy's name. I do. I feel awful because he started off actually posting his stuff online and got picked up. And then he started writing vampire stuff, and I wasn't as keen on him then. And like I said, I feel like a complete heel for right now, just drawing a blank on his name. It's been so long since I've read it. Rhonda Hopkins, she just put out a short last year, and I was lucky enough to be one of the first people to read it, and she donated it to a anthology that was supporting the B Foundation for cancer, but she's actually doing a book on it, so I'm kind of excited to see where she goes, because just the short really grabbed me. those are the ones that I would probably say indie scene that I've been really big on. Now, I just picked up, I think his name is Joseph Zuko, and forgive me if I get it wrong, but I just grabbed his book because, oddly enough, he started following me on Twitter, but he followed me, I think, because of the Spartan race, and he was kind of, saying, hey, I'm going to be at the same one you're running at, and good luck and everything. And then I saw who he was, and I go, oh, he writes zombie stuff. So I grabbed his book, and I'm actually just getting ready to read it. So hopefully I'll be adding him to my list because he's got a couple out there. So a lot of times I will just see something at random and grab it, especially if nobody's talking about it or it doesn't have a ton of reviews. And so I know that the guy's probably waiting because I review anything I read. If I read it, I write a review for it. And that's good, bad, or otherwise, and I don't sugarcoat stuff, which that's not always a popular thing to do, but I'm not going to steer somebody wrong. And I also preface things by always saying, this is just my opinion. You may read it and think I'm an idiot, so don't take this review and just run with it, So, but I love grabbing people I've never heard of. I love doing that.
And so you have given some feedback to somebody before, though, and said, hey, maybe, have you ever given anybody critique on their own work, per se?
Only if it's asked for. I will never, critique somebody's work unless they ask for it. And if I end up writing a review that's less than stellar, I keep it short, sweet, and I'm in and out. I don't sit there and beat the person up. I don't see the need to it. I will say that probably the only one-star review I ever gave a book was just because in 104 pages, he used the word fuck 600 and something times. I was actually starting to keep a tally sheet. And I'm like, come on, man. I mean, I was in the Navy for 6 years and people don't talk like this. He had a 9-year-old son or daughter at one point tell his mom, Jesus, fuck, Mom, why don't you just fucking lay the fuck off? And I'm like, no, I'm not buying that. That is...
Oh. That's pretty bad when you have to have a tally sheet out.
Well, I actually started the book over because I was like, maybe I'm just overreading this. But then I started keeping a tally sheet. I'm like, really? On one page, the word was used like over 30-something times. And I was like, oh my God, come on, man.
Yeah. You can't make a story out of that. No.
That's bad word count. That's all that is. It's like saying, 600 times.
I gotta ask, I mean, are you with a publisher or are you completely indie?
I'm completely indie. Technically, if you wanted to get technical, my wife, she for Christmas registered our publishing company name. And it's named after the birth months of my kids. I have a son born in May and a son and daughter born in December. So we went with May December Publications. Now, didn't even think. I was completely, and then they started saying, oh, this must be about a May December romance book. And I'm like, huh? What? No, it's the months my kids were born. I got 2 in one and 1 in the other. And that was actually when I was writing comedy material for a radio station. That was also that was what I was getting everything copywritten under, was MDP. And so when my wife said, what do you want to name it? I said, well, let's go with that. And she was like, okay. And so she registered it and everything else like that. But, I'm indie. Like I said, my wife is my publisher. So, what's she going to do? Say, no? Actually, she's the one going, you better write another book, man.
Well, on that, I mean, are y'all taking all genres? Y'all just kind of limiting that down to like just horror or what?
We actually had probably 20 people writing underneath us until last year. My wife's son died right before his 19th birthday. Complications due to being diabetic. He died on a Monday and was found on a Wednesday.
Oh.
And by his girlfriend. And that my wife's an accountant. She's got 2 master's degrees. she is the business side of things. I couldn't function without her because she assembles my book. I don't know anything about a computer other than how to turn it on and type on it. That's it. And I can play StarCraft. That's it. I don't know anything about Photoshop or any of that stuff. So she puts everything together. And I went to UCSD to get a certificate as an editor because one of the things in indie is you can find a lot of really, really poorly edited material. So the one good thing that people had going with us was they got edited. But when she lost her son, we cut everybody loose. She actually helped people set up their books, get them up on Kindle, showed them how to create their accounts so that they would just get paid and everything else like that, including a couple of people that had been with us from day one that had 7, 8, 9 books. We used to put out like 3 or 4 anthologies a year, including one that was specifically for first-timers. It was called First Time Dead. We had 3 volumes of that, and it was for people that had never been published before so that they could get a chance to, see their name in print. They got, a copy of the book. If you've been in an anthology or seen numbers in anthologies, they don't sell. Even the big ones don't really sell. So it wasn't like it was. We spent more probably producing the book and getting the cover and the artwork and everything else than we ever made back. But for some people, it got them rolling, and then they wanted to write more, and then they started kind of really digging it, and a couple of them have put out a number of books since then on their own. But we actually had one guy who does fairly good. We named Heath Stalka, who has the Monster Squad series. It was hard to, see him go because I'm not going to lie, we were a quote business, and he sold a few hundred units a month. So we had to do what was best for my wife. She just could not do the book work and deal with all of the inquiries and everything else like that. And so we've scaled it back to pretty much just me. We're going to continue to do our charity anthologies. This one got delayed, but for the same reason. She just really had a hard time getting out there and getting word out. But every year we did an anthology where 100% of everything that came in from it goes to charity. We did Red Cross one year. We did the B Foundation. And we're doing a diabetic foundation, obviously, is the one that we're targeting for the next one. But our cover artist donates his work for free. Everything on it is gratis. And then we usually try to, if it's a specific, like for instance, the V Foundation, we actually have a box of books we're getting ready to send them. We were supposed to send them forever ago. But, just a death like that really sort of derails everything and makes everything else seem sort of minor.
Yeah.
And prayers go to you all for that. And most importantly, to your wife. That's sorry to hear that.
And I got both you and your wife on my Facebook. I've hardly had the time to actually talk to either one of you.
Well, it's funny because I'm never on. My wife is actually, she will come tell me you have messages, and she'll read them off to me, and I'll give her responses. Because for me, I know that if I ever sit down and start doing that stuff, I'm going to get sucked into it, and that's time that I can spend working. If I write 5,000 words on Facebook, I'm not making a penny.
Yeah.
And I'm probably pissing people off. So it's kind of a double.
You should understand as well. So I'm going to ask you this, Mr. Brown, since you're zombie orientated, I'm going to ask you something I haven't asked anybody else. What would Mr. Todd Brown do, T.W. Brown do, in a zombie apocalypse?
I would head for Mount Hood. We have the Mount Hood Forest. It's right outside my window. I live on the outskirts of Portland. You're talking about an area that if you stay below the timberline, your inclement weather is only going to happen during the winter. It's got plenty of volcanic soil, so it's good farmland. You can find an area by a river. You're going to have a water supply source and very minimal foot traffic. So you're probably going to be able to stay away from people. And that's going to be your biggest threat. I don't think the zombies are going to be the problem. It's going to be the people that survive it. And that's the other thing that I get hit a lot for in my books. You know, people go, you have such a negative aspect on humanity. And I go, do you watch the news?
Valid point.
Yeah.
You don't want people coming over to your property or your safe zone and just trying to milk off you or something and lure the zombies in, is how I would look at it.
Take all your stuff, and or worse, you know. I mean, as a species, we have done things way worse than anything I've ever written. I was always a history buff in school. My grandfather got me sort of into it when I was younger because he served and he was at Pearl during World War II, and his stories about the real World War II versus the schoolbook version got me interested. And then, oddly enough, when I wrote Dakota, I started really researching the Civil War, and which made it easy because I dig finding out what happened, and so I did a lot of research. But I'm doing some stuff with pirates probably in about a year or so from now, and they are not Errol Flynn pirates. They are a lot more like what you see on Black Sails than they are the happy-go-lucky, swashbuckling types from the 50s. Pirates were horrible. Aunt Bonnie and Mary Read, two women, two of the nastiest, most evil creatures to sail. They terrified me.
Wow, so you're a researcher too. That's awesome, man. That's cool. So, like, we know that you write majority zombies because we're getting pretty close to our time frame here. We've asked you a lot of questions. How do you see an actual zombie being for readers that haven't read your book? Like, are they fast? Are they slow? How do you envision a zombie being?
I stick with the Romero, the old, slow, sort of, shambling thing. I liken it to the tide. You can build a sandcastle, but the tide's going to wipe it out. If you've ever seen, you watch that footage of like when the tsunamis come through, we think we are living in things that are sturdy and everything else like that, but you throw a million bodies at it that don't care that they're being smashed, and it's just going to move stuff. It's going to be like a tsunami, and I think that, in my mythology, they sort of start to congregate over time, and in fact, by the time you get to books 10, 11, and 12, you're several years, there's a fast forward of about 9 years at one point. And now they're known to move in herds, and there are people that actually do like weather forecasts and tell you where some of the biggest ones are. And some of the herds numbering in, the millions, they hit a settlement, and no wall you've built is going to stop them.
Wow.
And so it's just mass. It's just strength in numbers, really. It's not that they're fast or scary or anything. It's just they just don't stop. You will have to eventually sleep. They don't.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. God, man, I'd love to just keep on picking your mind. TJ, you chomping at a bit to ask a question?
Well, I got a question. I've been asking here recently a little bit of everybody. What's one thing that you absolutely love about your fans, and one thing that you absolutely hate about your fans?
I would say the thing that I love is the fact that they know my world better than I do. I mean, I will get comments back from them, and they'll be like, I'm not sure he'd act that way. I mean, that's really out of character for him, that kind of thing. And I will see that kind of critique as an actual positive thing. That means they're paying attention, So I would have to say the one thing I like the most is I read The Stand. I probably read it 15, 20 times by now. I love that book. I could probably tell Stephen King things about it that he's long since forgotten. So that's really what I dig about the fans is want another book tomorrow. And if I churned out a book a month, it'd be crap. You know, I mean, I wouldn't want to read it. Why would I want somebody else to, you know, be forced to read that stuff? You know, and I think they miss, because they read it in a day. You know, they take 2 or 3 months of your work or longer, and they polish it off in a, you know, 1 or 2 day sitting, and they're like, okay, when's the next one? Jesus, man. Give me some time. You know, I mean, I feel fairly prolific at 5,000 words a day. You know, 3,000 to 5,000 words a day, plus 3 or 4 hours in the recording studio, and then if I have an editing project, I have to devote time to that because I edit for people, and you know, so I stay busy. At 3,000 to 5,000 words a day, and my books come in averaging around 100,000 words minimum. You know, with except Ava's short. Ava's Pulp Fiction, 50,000, 60,000 words. But the dead books, the zombie books, are 100,000 to 160,000 words. Divide that by 3,000, man. It's going to take me a while.
Yeah. And I agree with you that you don't. I don't think fans understand that. I think they just expect, okay. Well, hell, I've been on TJ's ass for a while for his book 666, but at the same token, you have to have appreciation for it. Otherwise, you are just going to throw out crap. And I really hope that fans of yours, I'm you know, certainly one that's growing on to you. I haven't read anything yet, but I plan to. But you have to have that respect of give them time. And so I hope fans do hear this podcast so they have an understanding. It is a lot of work to write. You made your literal job to do that. So, but if you do rush yourself, it is going to be crap. I do believe that 100%. So fans, just
back off.
It'll get there.
Well, you know, that's the same way as like us just releasing our Unfleshed. You know, I mean, it was literally like 3 days later. It's just like, okay, so when's book 2? You know, I mean, I'm just like, I mean, seriously, you know. But to me, honestly, I like to let books marinate. If it's a standalone book, fine, I'll go ahead and release it out. But for a series, you're gonna wait 5 to 6 months between books. I can finish it today, but I'm still not gonna put it out till 5 to 6 months because I want to see the full potential behind what that book can do before I throw out something else.
Well, plus if you overload and you flood the market, they're going to expect you to have that fast of a release time with everything, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I made that mistake with 3 of the dead books. With books 4, 5, and 6, I was on a 3-month release schedule. Every 3 months a new one. I was taking no breaks. I was taking no days off. I just wrote. I wrote for a year, and that's all I did. And the problem was, you know, once I got back to real schedules and the books were, you know, 6-ish months apart, people were like, what's taking so long? And it's like, you know, I wasn't really happy with a couple of the things that happened. And I felt that some of my work suffered because I've got to get another one out. They're going to forget about me. And I think that was the big thing that drove me to release so fast is, well, I don't want them to forget, you know. I don't want them to move on.
Oh, definitely. Well, I got one question that I got for you that I ask absolutely everybody. What is one question that you are never asked, but if asked, would tell a lot more about you?
Well, I'll be straight up with you. It would have to be about the time I spent in prison.
Ah.
Wow.
So
that's my next question.
I did 13 years, man. I was married to a woman. She had 4 kids. I'm going to give you a very generic, very point by point on this because no one wants soapboxing in this stuff. I was away from her for 6 years, had a new wife, had new kids, was coaching football, and got a phone call because her son had been picked up by the police he had been caught in the act molesting a neighbor kid. They said, "Oh, really? Well, what happened?" "Well, it was done to me." That was his only statement. It's the only statement he has on record. They turned that into 13 counts of sex abuse 1. They got a 3-page written account from the youngest child she recounted an incident that happened when she was 18 months old, that was 6 years prior, actually almost 9.5 years prior by then, because I was there for almost 2 years. And that was the most damning piece of evidence they had. When I was sitting in county jail with my attorney trying to fight it, he finally told me straight up. He goes, "If you fight this, you're going to do 500 plus months in prison. Because they will point, they will cry, and you will lose. If you do not take this deal on the table for 180 months, you're going to go to prison for 500, and there's nothing I can do to stop it." And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" So I had to take a deal. And that's affected the rest of my life. That is, that is a scarlet letter that in this society can really light people up, And prison's full of people who didn't do it, So nobody wants to hear that either. They don't want to hear somebody say, "No, I did not do it." But I had a daughter-in-law, my wife's oldest, who was not happy about this marriage, obviously. She's like, "You're marrying a what? You have 2 younger children and you're doing what?" And so she did not talk to me until Johnny died. She showed up to support her mom, not because of me, obviously. But while we were there, she finally said, "All right, tell me what happened." And afterwards, she started crying and she says, "I'm so sorry that I took this long to hear your side of it." And I said, "It doesn't matter." She's like, "Yeah, but..." And I said, "No, there's no buts. You're protecting your family. You got nothing to apologize for." I used to get on her mother because her mother would get mad at her when she didn't want to, come over for Christmas or whatever. I said, "Look, she has a reason. She has a valid reason. Look at this in black and white terms. You're married to a convicted sex offender. Who the fuck wants that in their life? She's protecting hers. You can't be mad at her for that." So when we met, and she was like, she felt bad. And I was like, "You don't have anything to feel bad about." And she kept wanting to apologize. I said, "No apologies. You are protecting your family. You don't have anything to apologize for." And people that I've sat down with face to face, once I've looked them in the eye and spoke with them, they're like, "Okay." I had a guy inside that was a lifer, that was a hardcore shot caller for one of the bigger gangs in the facility, that walked up to my table one day and plopped down and said, "I've been in pretty much forever. I've beat down and I've extorted a lot of freaks." That's prison slang for sex offenders. He goes, "I've watched you since day one. You ain't a freak and you're off limits. My boys touch you, I want to know. Anybody wearing my shield crosses your path and gives you shit, they deal with me." I was like, "Thank you." And he had the word Satan across his forehead and the word "fuck cops" on his cheeks. He was pretty much part of the system forever. So, not a lot of places were going to hire him if he ever did get out, but he wasn't going to get out. So, but it's a part of life that I had to deal with. It's a part of life that I still have to deal with, because there are people out there, because I've never hidden it. It's actually been on my author page. I've blogged about it. Anybody that actually, when they signed with my wife and I, when she started MVP, we told them straight up. We said, "Look, you need to know this in advance, because I don't want this rubbing, I don't want my mud on your shoes." And so, but there are people out there that, "You can't support this guy. He's garbage." They don't want, they want to throw the rocks and they want to yell. They want to have, the villagers want a monster to burn, and I'm a good target. I'm an easy target because I won't fight back. Not in this one. I'm not going to sit there and spend every day of my life for the rest of my life going, "Boo,
there were more people, because I do agree with you that, and you see it from time to time, once in a blue moon, somebody who has served fucking, 15, 20, 30 fucking years of their lives, all of a sudden to find out they were completely innocent. So, the justice system in general to me is a load of shit. In general. I think it's just okay. Well, you could take a simple case as marijuana now. They're legalizing it in the States, but somebody who's been in prison for marijuana for the last 25, 30 fucking years, from way back then, what's the case for that guy?
Yeah, we're grandfathering him out and saying, you know what, it's not against the law anymore, so we're dismissing it. But the reason being, and this is the fact that people that don't realize that have never been sucked into the system, this is an industry now. There are corporations that run these things now. It's an industry. They don't want people out. They want people doing time. In the state I live in, we have Measure 11. That is a whole list of offenses that there's no bargains. You can't go to the table and say, we're going to give you this or that. It's a straight, you're getting this many months, period. And there's no probation, there's no good time inside, which has made the facilities a lot harder to live. Because if you got nothing to lose, there's nothing stopping you from jacking some dude that walks by you that gives you the eye. If you've got good time, you better have you're going to want a good reason for giving the state 18 free days of your life. That punch better really be a good one, So the institutions have been, turned into corporations, and so there's money for it. But I've been out since 2011, and I take a polygraph every 6 months. My PO he's never even been to my house, and the reason being, he goes, you pass so clean that I don't care about you anymore. He goes, I can't let you off early because of what you're on paper for. He said, but my last meeting, I pulled into the office, he handed me his business card and said, your next appointment is on this day. Can you make it? And I'm like, yeah. And that was it. I'm not on his radar because, well, for reasons. The reason I'm not on his radar.
And this and that, and you're doing a good job for your family.
So.
But I'll tell you what, I did hear those rumors, because in the writer world you hear a lot of shit circulate, and I've actually seen to where people has kind of more or less protested you being on events and many other things. And honestly, I'm not one of those people that I guess just someone tells me something and I'm just like, okay, so that's what it is. And one of the reasons why is I can really relate to you, and I'm sure you had never read my autobiography, but I've actually got put into one of those situations. Luckily on mine, I was proven innocent. I wasn't even at my fucking house whenever all this shit, happened. And, but it's just the whole fact that, unless you were there and you actually seen the things happen, you really don't have a fucking clue. You're only just talking at your ass by what you see through black and white. And so, yeah, and even the guy that was guilty for it, he was close to her age. They were both minors. So, nothing ever got done about it. It was just
somebody has to be blamed, and that's what the society's come to.
Well, it wasn't even like a slap on the wrist, and I was only 18 at the time. And yes, you know what? I was doing illegal actions. I was drinking before the age of 21. But what fucking teenagers don't?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was there.
So I definitely understand where you're coming from by all means, and that definitely turned into a really shitty situation. And my grandma actually is the one that came in and actually told me about this shit. But I didn't feel like I had anything to hide. I went straight to the damn police station. I didn't try to hide from him or anything else. And
still, in a situation like he was in, you're kind of, he's foobarred. He's fucked.
Oh yeah, but
I drove from Seattle to Portland twice for interviews voluntarily. You know, I mean, I gave them everything they wanted. When they finally came and picked me up on October 13th of 1998, I told the girl that I was dating at the time, I said, hey, I'll be home by Christmas. Yeah, nope. You know, I mean, and there's really, you know, like I said, crying about it's not going to get you anywhere, and spending all my time fighting people over it and getting sucked up or butthurt about stuff when people start running their mouths. I know who I am. I know the reality of who I am, and I know the truth. I have a daughter who adores me. I have a stepdaughter who loves me to pieces. Actually, is going to run obstacle course races with me next season. You know, and people that know me, they know me. You know, and
that's what's important right there. You know, I mean, people are gonna take whatever they're gonna take out of any situation. I mean, any situation. You know what? And you're on my Facebook, so I'm sure you've seen, the picture of me with my meat, that I was cooking for a barbecue and shit. And they're blasting me all over the fucking news for child support. So I mean, that shit went viral.
yeah.
And I mean, it turned out to be bullshit. And yeah, I just went to court last week over it, and they said, hey, you're in the good. But then they turn around and they send me this damn piece of paper right here that says that I turn around and I have to pay the court $567 for them to tell me that I was in the good.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's not justice.
Yeah, I spend $200 every 6 months on a polygraph and $35 a month for state supervision. That, like I said, I see my PO every 3 months for less than 5 minutes. It takes me longer to drive there and sit in the waiting room than we actually spend talking. But it is what it is, and there's nothing I'm going to do about it.
And you know what?
I'm fighting the system. Be my guest.
And you know what? I can relate to that as well. You know what? Whenever me and my wife committed adultery, whenever I was in Iraq with the military, she cleared out my bank account and everything. But you know what? Hey, me coming back, they tell me, hey, automatically, we're going to put you on a 10-year probation. And it wasn't no like, hey, we're going to do the back child support and you have so much time to pay this, or you need to pay so much extra per month until this is paid off. No, it was automatically. I was on 10 years probation. And I actually had to serve 7 of that before they let me off. I mean, that was an extra, $200 per month, and then turn around and plus, pay this extra child support that they say that I owed, whenever in fact it had been paid. Hell, she took all this money out of my account and shit, but hey, that was a gift. Yeah. Well, anyways, real quick, before we end this, tell everybody where they can find you.
You can find me on Amazon. You can also find most of my stuff on Audible. I'm doing the narration for my spinoff series. In fact, Dead Snapshot Portland is in final production right now. Snapshot Leads, which is the second book in my spinoff, actually comes out next month. And then book 12 of the Dead series comes out in October. We're always doing sales and doing box sets so that you can get it cheaper. So, hey, look for it cheaper. If you can get it cheap, do it. Right now, we've got the first book in the series, Dead the Ugly Beginning. It's free. So if you get it and read it and hate it, you didn't lose anything in the deal. So,
Or if they get it and they love it.
Then I'm going to get paid, because then you got a whole lot of reading to do. My That Cool Ava series, if you want something kind of, a little bit humorous, at least I find it humorous, she's on Audible as well as on Amazon, and we're trying to make sure we're on all the other sites. We were in KDP for a long time, and we're not anymore, so we're trying to get on to Kobo and all those other places. So if you look for us and don't find us there, let us know, because we'll work on getting it on those other sites.
Hey, look into Draft to Digital.
Draft to Digital?
Yep, it'll put you on Kobo. It's gonna put you on everything. People, and you get to set your own prices. They can buy you literally anywhere for your ebooks.
Hey, shoot me that by a message so I don't forget.
I will.
Because my daughter's nickname for me is Dory, the fish from Finding Nemo, because she can tell me something and 5 seconds later, I don't remember.
you to the ground, burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground, burn you to the ground.